Late one night, a police officer was patrolling a desolate area popular with young couples doing more than just sitting in the dark. Catching his attention was a couple in a car with the interior light on. Moving closer, the cop could see a young man behind the steering wheel reading a newspaper. In the back seat, a young blonde was knitting. The lawman walked up to the vehicle and knocked on the driver's side window. The startled lad rolled it down and said, "Yes, officer?" "What are you doing?" the cop asked. "Isn't it obvious?" the young man replied. "I'm reading today's newspaper." Pointing to the blonde in the back seat, the policeman grunted. "And what's she doing?" "I believe she's knitting a sweater," the guy behind the wheel responded. "How old are you?" the cop inquired. "I'm 22, officer." "And the girl, how old is she?" The dude in the driver's seat looked at his watch and said, "She'll turn 18 in 10 minutes.
A company, feeling it was time for a shakeup, hired a new CEO. The new boss was determined to rid the company of all slackers. On a tour of the facilities, the CEO noticed a guy leaning against a wall and idly picking his teeth. The room was full of workers and he wanted to let them know that he meant business. He asked the guy, "How much money do you make a week?" A little surprised, the young man looked at him and said, "I make $400 a week." "Why?" The CEO said, "Wait right here." He walked back to his office, came back in 2 minutes, and handed the guy $1,600 in cash and said, "Here's 4 weeks' pay. Now get out and don't come back." Feeling pretty good about himself, the CEO looked around the room and asked, "Does anyone want to tell me what that goofball did here?" From across the room a voice said, "Sure, he was the pizza delivery guy from Domino's and was just waiting to collect the money."
A walk in the park. On his walk, he sees 2 men sitting on a park bench and looking very down. "What's wrong?" he asks them. One of the men looks up at the man and lets out a long sigh. "Take a seat and I'll tell you." Curious, he sits down next to the 2 men. "The paint's wet," the man says.
A woman is walking through the park when she sees a very attractive man sitting on a park bench. He's reading a book and eating some fruit out of a Tupperware container. Slowly the woman gathers the courage to go ask the man out. So, she walks over and takes a seat next to him on the bench, turns to him and says, "Sorry to bother you. I know this may be a little forward, but I would love to grab coffee with you sometime." Flattered, the man responds, "Sure, but what makes you so certain you and I would get along so well?" "Well," the woman says, "a couple things, actually. I noticed you were wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt. Iron Maiden are my favorite band of all time. When they went on their reunion tour in 1999, my parents took me to see them in Cleveland. I was 12 years old and it was the first concert I ever went to. I absolutely love Iron Maiden." The man can't believe it. "I saw them play Cleveland in '99. First concert I ever went to on my own. My best friend Jimmy Spitz and I told our parents we were sleeping at each other's houses, snuck out, took a bus into the city and saw them play at the Plain Dealer Pavilion. Naturally, they're both shocked." "If that isn't weird enough," says the woman, "I noticed you're reading Mark Twain. I was a communications major in university and I actually wrote my thesis on Mark Twain and how he used satire as a lens to comment on current events of the time, comparing him to satirical news sources of today. He's my favorite author." Now the man is really taken aback. "Get out of here. I was an English major in university. I specialized in 19th century American literature and this is like my 4th or 5th time reading Tom Sawyer. I absolutely love Mark Twain." They both can't believe it. "Okay," the woman says. "Well, buckle up because here's the icing on the cake. I noticed you're eating a prune. Prunes are my absolute favorite fruit. When I was a kid, my grandfather lived on a farm. He had an orchard that mainly grew apples and some lemons, but he knew how much my sister and I loved prunes, so he kept a couple of plum trees. Every year at the end of the summer, we'd go up and harvest the plums with him. He'd dry them, and by the time we'd go back to his place for Thanksgiving, he'd always have those prunes saved just for us. They're my favorite fruit. I love prunes. You're eating a prune, this has got to be fate. What do you say? The man puts down his fruit and responds, "It's a date."
An old man was walking on a park adjoining the cliff famous for suicide and saw a young woman standing at the edge contemplating suicide. He approached her. "Don't come near me, old man. Since you are anyway going to die, why can't you make this old man happy with a quickie?" She shrieked. "Over my dead body." Old man. "Okay, if that's the case, I will walk down and wait for you at the bottom." And then he walked away. The woman stood for another 10 minutes and came back to her car and left. The old man who was watching her from the bushes sighed. 7 suicide attempts saved this month.
A 17-year-old boy who works part-time at Pizza Hut drives up to park in front of the house in a beautiful Porsche. Naturally, his parents know that there's no way he earned enough with his after-school job to buy such a car. "Where did you get that car?" his mom and dad screamed in shock. "I bought it today," replied the teen calmly. "With what money, young man?" his mom demands. "We know how much a Porsche costs and you cannot afford it." "Well, it's used and I got a good deal," says the boy. "This one cost me $20. Who on earth would sell a car like that for $20? "The woman up the street," the boy replies. "I don't know her name, she just moved in. She ordered a pizza and when I delivered it to her, she asked me if I wanted to buy a Porsche for $20. The boy's dad and mom hurry over to their new neighbor's house, ready to demand an explanation. Curiously, their new neighbor is calmly planting flowers in her front yard. "I'm the father of the kid you just sold a sports car to for $20, the dad says. "I need an explanation from you." "Well," the woman says, not looking up from her garden. "This morning I got a phone call from my husband. I thought he was on a business trip in Florida, but it seems he has run off to Hawaii with his secretary and doesn't intend to come back. What on earth does that have to do with selling our son a Porsche for $20? The boy's mom asks, utterly perplexed. The new neighbor smiles very big and pauses for a minute. "Well, my husband asked me to sell his new Porsche and send him the money. So I did."
A farmer named Rick had a car accident. In court, the trucking company's lawyer was questioning Rick. "Didn't you say, at the moment of the accident, 'I'm fine'?" asked the lawyer. Rick responded, "Well, I'll tell you what happened. I had just loaded my favorite meal, Bessie, into the..." "I did not ask you for any details," the lawyer interrupted. "Just answer the question. Did you not say, at the scene of the accident, 'I'm fine'?" Rick said, "Well, I had just got Bessie into the trailer, and I was driving down the road." The lawyer interrupted again and said, "Judge, I'm trying to establish the fact that, at the scene of the accident, this man told the highway patrolman on the scene that he was just fine. Now, several weeks after the accident, he is trying to sue my client. I believe he is a fraud. Please tell him to simply answer the question." By this time, the judge was fairly interested in Rick's answer and said to the lawyer, "I'd like to hear what he has to say about his favorite meal, Bessie." Rick thanked the judge and proceeded. "Well, as I was saying, I had just loaded Bessie, my favorite meal, into the trailer and was driving down the highway when this huge semi-truck and trailer ran the stop sign and smacked my truck right in the side. I was thrown into one ditch and Bessie was thrown into the other. I was hurting real bad and didn't want to move. However, I could hear old Bessie moaning and groaning. I knew she was in terrible shape just by her groans. When the highway patrolman came on the scene, he could hear Bessie moaning and groaning, so he went over to her. After he looked at her and saw her near fatal condition, he took out his rifle and shot her between the eyes. Then the patrolman came across the road, rifle still in hand, looked at me and said, 'How are you feeling?' Now, what the heck would you say?"
A stranger finds 2 French men throwing coins in a park. When the stranger asks why the French men are doing that, one of them replies, We are trying to see who can throw these coins the highest. Whoever wins owes the other a hot dog. But suddenly the other Frenchman interjects. Wait. I thought we were going off distance, not height. And the prize was supposed to be all the fallen change that we threw. Confused, the first Frenchman responds. No, what? I never said that. What did you even hear me say? Annoyed, the second Frenchman replies. I remember you did. You said we were going to see who gets the franc further.
A man goes to a marriage counselor all by himself. Confused, the marriage counselor says, This is quite odd, as usually this works better when both partners attend therapy together. Since you already paid for this session, I guess we will just have to pretend she is here and role play. I'll be your wife. The man instantly stiffens up and looks very nervous. Counselor. Honey, are you not happy in our marriage? Man. I can't complain about that. Counselor. Is it the relations? Man. I can't complain about that either. Counselor. Well, is it the way I treat you? Man. Nope. Definitely can't complain about that. Getting frustrated about the lack of any insight, the counselor breaks character and says, I don't think this is really going anywhere without your wife present. Why don't you bring her with you? Man. No, that won't work at all. It has to be just you and me. No role playing either. Counselor. Well, why is that? Man. To you, I can complain. Hey there. I put a lot of effort into making these videos, so please subscribe for more jokes and stay happy. Thank you.